I guess I'll begin with the typical mundane introduction as to who I am and why I'm telling you this. They want me to hide my identity, so just call me E. I am currently 16 years old, and I'm on holiday in the Philippines. My mum was a Filipina. As a result, we spend most summers here to escape the dreary grey skies of Britain. I have to admit that the change of scenery is really rejuvenating. I had just finished my GCSEs, so lazing around on a beach for a few weeks seemed ideal. The Philippines on the whole is a vast place, being more of a massive chain of islands than a country. On the night of the 26th, my father, mother and I left Manila, the city where the airport is, and we headed for... they don't want me to tell you. It's a beach resort with palm trees, coral and sunsets in abundance. That's about all I can say, I think. It's not the average resort you come across, as the actual accommodation there was in traditional Filipino style. Picture wooden villas overlooking the turquoise sea. I stayed in Villa 22, whereas my parents stayed in 23. The two villas were connected by a bamboo bridge on the first floor, so they could check up on me to see if I was getting on all right. I lived a pretty sedentary lifestyle, so the majority of my days were spent listening to music on the hammock. Mum and Dad knew that from an early age, I had been very independent, so they'd only come and check on me once a day, if that. Allowance would be given, and we would only meet occasionally for lunch and dinner. This resort I speak of, it was built on a hill, meaning the stairs going to our villas were extremely steep. The steps were essentially rock slabs with encrusted seashells going up the hill. From what I can remember, it was a fairly old resort. The staff maintained the grounds well, but you could see wear and tear in some of the rooms. And the swimming pool, it had this unnerving reddish tint. I never saw anyone go in there. Signposts were scattered across the hotel, directing guests to one of the several restaurants, spas and restrooms on the tiny island. Being curious, I asked the resort staff if perhaps there was another swimming pool on the island, as the colour in ours was too off-putting. I've had multiple skin conditions for all my life, and the salt water in the ocean had stung me like hell. Contrary to their usual upbeat, helpful nature, the Filipino staff seemed hesitant to even respond to my question. I repeated the question at least 2 or 3 more times to some other staff members across the space, and the only response I ever got were blank, icy stares. Asking the staff here was practically pointless, I thought, so I took it upon myself to go online. The search results were all over the place. Weird, disjointed, nothing. Not just that, it was like this resort was non-existent on the internet, even with the hundreds of guests staying weekly. No reviews, no pictures, just nothing. A couple of days after this, I was really itching to go swimming, so I took it upon myself to personally search the island. The island's perimeter was 2 miles at best, and I was feeling confident that I would be able to find a pool somewhere, especially as we weren't the only resort here. I hadn't actually seen the other resorts, but loud laughter and native music could be heard during the night from across the island. At this point in the story, my memory gets a little hazy. The small, insect-ridden nature path I had taken to find the pool had just stopped. I looked back, and all I could see was a tropical forest staring back at me, with thick air resting on the forest floor. Well, I was heading east when I ventured out, I thought. So logically, I opened up the compass app on my iPhone and I headed west to return to the resort. As I said, my recollection from this point is not great, but I distinctly do remember I walked for hours in between trees and being unable to find the trail. It seemed like this forest would never end, despite the fact I was heading in the exact same direction. Then, a lifeline. A signpost up in the distance. In fact, it was identical to the ones at the resort, which filled me with joy. Surely, this meant I was back, safe and sound. Except I wasn't. The rotten signpost had 5 arrows pointing out of the top, all of them in the same direction, left. It simply read, "Silent Pool," engraved deeply in the wooden sign. I knew heading back to the resort was futile, and at least the pool must have someone about that I could talk to about returning. At this point, I wasn't even fancying the idea of swimming anymore. The dense jungle faded almost instantly. Instead, a long line of stepping stones along a calm, slow-flowing stream. I wanted to look back, to see if the forest was still there, but I could not. I was drawn to these stepping stones, like a mouse to cheese. Step by step, I made my way across the stream towards a building. I can't explain what it was, but it was unbelievably tall, and it casted a huge shadow across the land. Its lime green and beige coat of paint was old and flaky to the touch. Again, the words "Silent Pool" were engraved in the lone, skinny door. There was no turning back now. Having no doorknob or handle, I had to kick the door with some force. After 2 or 3 tries, it swung open with a bellowing thud. True to its word, there was, in fact, a silent pool. It had this hot spring style to it, being dug directly into the ground with steaming, natural water. Nobody was around, and the derelict structure I found myself in looked like it hadn't seen a visitor in years. I undressed, put on my swimming shorts, and slowly entered the silent pool. I must admit, at first, it was very relaxing. It was really just like any other hot spring, which made me wonder why it was so secluded and unmaintained. Was there an accident here? Did they run out of money? I laid there, in the silent pool, feeling increasingly uneasy, minute after minute. The only thing that was really comforting me were the crickets and birds making noises in the background. This white noise, it helped to distract my mind from overthinking too much. And just like that, it all stopped. The crickets and the birds were just silenced. With my back to my change of clothes, I turned around and I exited the silent pool, too afraid to stay there. As I looked up from where my clothes were, 2 figures glared down at me. They were both completely charcoal black, with a slender build. No limbs, save for 1 arm each, and these hollowed out holes for eyes. No mouths. No emotion. Yet, I could feel these two beings smiling. The hairs on my body stood up with fright beyond comparison. I opened my mouth to scream for help, but nothing came out. The left figure, much shorter than the right, picked up my clothes and politely handed them to me and helped me out of the silent pool. Why? Then I thought, if they wanted to kill me, I would surely be dead already. This rather unsettling fact eased me a little, and over a minute or so, I began to notice their friendly nature. Maybe they were angels or spirits of the light. Without making a single sound, the two entities glided across the stony surface around the pool and out the door I had opened. The outside world that I could see through the door was nothing. And by nothing, I quite literally mean no space, no matter, just emptiness. There was no void of black. There was no color at all for that matter. I turned around and I yelled at the beings for an explanation. The taller, right-hand side spirit simply carved the word Mata into the side of the wall with its lone arm. For those who don't know Tagalog, it translates to eyes. After looking at the word, observing it carefully to see anything else I hadn't spotted, I looked back up at the towering dark spirits. They both did this synchronized point to their respective hollow eye holes before pointing to my fingers. At this point, as any logical person would, I ran. Well, I tried to anyway, but I couldn't. I was frozen. I was not paralyzed. My limbs were flailing about, but I did not move. I tried to pull out my phone to call the police, but I was greeted only with a red screen if I tried turning it on. They were still pointing at my fingers. I didn't know what exactly they were asking, so I asked them nervously what they wanted. Both of them got the sharp end of their stump arms and carved holes into their faces. And they didn't bleed or even react with any pain from this. They didn't have skin, exactly. But I didn't want to find out what it was instead. Then, it spoke. The sheer fact that it spoke was creepy enough, but its voice was my father's voice. "Son, do you want happiness?" it asked me. I replied with a hesitant yes, shielding my face with my hands. I couldn't bear looking at this thing's hollowed-out eyes anymore. The shorter, left spirit, this time in my mother's voice, asked me the exact same question, to which I replied again, yes. They explained to me how I got lost in the human world and ended up in their world by mistake. They explained to me that human eyes do not see the world fully, but only see what evil entities want you to see. They will create a normal-looking matrix reality, and you will live there. And eventually they will capture your soul when you die. Everybody goes to hell. Except not me. I wouldn't want that. With the most assured I felt in a long time, I got my hands and clawed away. Piece of flesh by piece of flesh, before digesting the remains of my eye. I didn't feel any pain, only happiness. A lot of time has passed since then. I can't remember the last time I heard another voice, except those of my parents. It must have been hundreds of years ago by now. They would tell me every day how beautiful the world here is, and how much they love me. I love them too. I really do. Their cold embrace comforts me. I wait patiently with my mother and father for another lost soul that we can help. Come visit the silent pool